Hi, welcome back to this module, and we are going to talk about your brain for a moment. And I am not going to get all sciencey on you. Absolutely not. You can Google any of this information and you can get more if you want. But for this course, I do want to touch on something, because when we think about winter, we think about how we might have been wronged, or how we might have been hurt, or we had no choice to react that way. We really had no control over our reaction. And in some way, you're right. You have absolutely, no control sometimes about how you react in your body. What we do have control over is how that reaction gets translated into behavior. So I want to go into that first feeling, into that reaction. Now, we have reactions in a multitude of ways. If somebody comes and attacks us, we have a reaction. If somebody says something and we think, was that a dig at me? I'm not sure. We have a reaction. If somebody brings us flowers or sends us a lovely present, we have a reaction. So reactions aren't necessarily all in the negative space, right? We have reactions about everything. But when we're talking about the 5 seasons and winter in particular, the reactions that we're going to talk about in this section are really going to be those fueled by anger and fear and hurt and, that kind of reaction to jump into the fire, right? Like, I am going to either fight you, I'm going to run away because I want to hide from you, or I'm going to freeze you out. So that place that we respond from is a part of the brain. And I want to talk about the 3 places that your reactions come from in your brain, because I think it makes a difference for you to understand how we go through the process of understanding winter, right? Once we understand the kind of root, we can't just pull out the weed and just pull it from the top and toss it. No, you've got to take the root ball. And that really is getting into this space. So the 3 reactions that we have from our brain in any given situation in a negative space come from these places. The first one might be an interaction where somebody says something to you and then you think about it and you think, that's not working for me, or that's not okay, or I'm going to analyze that a little bit. That level of reaction space is your neocortex, or your thinking brain. And it is responsible for things like abstract reasoning, creativity, problem solving, cause-effect thinking. So it is planning your comeback, right? Or it is planning the next thing you're going to say. It is strategizing about your response. It is compiling evidence that the person isn't correct. If you are operating from that level of your brain, you are still kind of in that higher level thinking space, right? So you're not super triggered, you're not highly emotional, you're not flooded at all. You're really like, I can figure this out and I have a response for that. And that would really be an interaction with your love partner that didn't get to the core of anything. You were not afraid for something. You were not fearful for your relationship. You did not feel attacked. You really could compartmentalize that in the top portion of your brain, your thinking brain, your neocortex, and say, no, actually, I don't think it's like that. So that's the first layer. The second layer where our responses might come from are what we call the limbic system, or our emotional brain. And in the limbic system, this is where we have affect regulation. So how do we regulate the way we are feeling? It is our empathy, our tolerance, our emotions, and how we feel about something. So when you react and you have this pull, a little bit of like, oh my gosh, how could you, like that drawing in, that is often from our limbic system. It is that feeling space where you're not really thinking about your response anymore. You're really feeling hurt or retaliatory, or you're feeling like there needs to be a little bit of, a comeback, or, some kind of jab back to balance, kind of the status quo between you. So if you're operating from that place, it's very much a feeling place. The third place is rich and deep and dark, and it is our reptilian brain. It is that deep space where we have instincts to survive. So if you are walking in a garage at night and it's raining and dark and you are alone and then you hear footsteps, your reptilian brain picks up immediately that you are unsafe and something is around you that might be dangerous, and you get very hyper aware of your surroundings. You start hearing things magnified. You might have better vision, so you can see what's going on in the shadows. We have that reptilian brain for survival. It really does regulate some of our natural, kind of physiological responses, like our heartbeat and our breathing and swallowing and our startle reflex. But what it really does is it puts us in that state of we must survive, which is great when you're in a dark garage in the middle of the night. It is not great when you're standing in your kitchen arguing with your partner about, who left the garbage out and the bear got into it or something, right? Like, that is not the time for you to be coming from your reptilian brain, but we do it all the time because we don't really think about these 3 layers of our brain. So when you are operating from your reptilian brain, you are going into blizzard town very fast, because what happens when we come from that reptilian brain space is it is not about relationships. It is not about connection. It is not about compromise. It is not about cooperation or collaboration. It is about, oh my gosh, I am in danger. You are putting me in danger and I need to do something about it to survive. I will fight you. Blizzard. I will freeze you out. Silent treatment. Blizzard. Or I will run away and I will flee. Blizzard. Right? So when we are coming from that deep reptilian brain, we are not on our path to summer. Absolutely not. I don't want you to do anything about it right now, except in your workbook. I want you to write down what might have been a time where you recognized a conflict with your partner might have touched on the neocortex space of your brain. Like, when did you have a conflict and you were really able just to talk it through? When was a time where you felt compelled to jump into the conversation? When were you feeling your way in that interaction, in that conflict, in that storm? When was a time that you had that feeling, right? Where you operated from that limbic system where you might have cried, you might have yelled, you might have, reacted in a feeling. Like, I keep moving forward because that's how it feels for me. When I'm feeling into an argument or a conflict with my partner, I am definitely, kind of operating from this part of my chest. And then, of course, identify when might be a time that you were in your reptilian space. Right? When might be a time that you entered into the conflict with your partner and decided to go down that road and go into winter, and then you became emotionally flooded. You couldn't hear. You couldn't see straight. You couldn't think straight. Everything just felt like it was collapsing on top of you. And in the book, I talk about this, as research shows, when you have an instance of this kind of emotional flooding, not only do you have tunnel vision where you can't see everything else because you're so hyper focused on the thing, the conflict, the issue at hand, you also start dulling out your other senses. So you don't hear all the words, right? You might pick and choose the words that validate how hurt you feel or how much of an awful person your partner is. Right? So you don't hear all the words, you only hear some of the words, and your brain fills in the rest of the story. Obviously, the reptilian brain is a very unsafe and unhealthy place to be with your love partner, because if you are consistently going to that reptilian response space, you are going to have a harder time getting to summer. And you are also going to not trust your partner and your relationship. You're not going to believe in the power of your relationship to bring you happiness if you are often in the place of emotional flooding and shutdown mode, right? So I want you to evaluate, for the last few conflicts, where were you? And if you cannot remember the last time you were in your reptilian brain space, I'm so happy, right? I mean, that means it's a long time ago, which means that conflict with your partner has not pushed you over that kind of proverbial edge, right? It hasn't taken you to those dark spaces that you can't recover. It hasn't pushed you down and kept you there, right? It really hasn't been that kind of a scenario in your relationship, and that's amazing. So that means you're operating from your limbic system and your neocortex system to engage in conflict, and that's awesome. If you do experience the reptilian response more than you would like, take a look at what that looks like. What are the things that push you into that, over that edge, right? Into that dark hole. What are the things that your partner does, or what are the feelings that you have? Maybe it's an old trauma wound that you hadn't thought of. You know, sometimes people will say things like, I'm fine and I'm a normal, calm, totally rational person. And then, you know, my partner and I will go driving and they will start, you're going too fast. You're going too slow. Why did you take that corner like that? No, about the person's driving, and they have road rage and they are losing their mind with reptilian responses because they are remembering when they started to drive with their parent and that was not a great experience, right? So they don't even recognize the two scenarios as being related. Learning how to drive as a 15-and-a-half-year-old and driving with your partner at 40, you don't even think of them consciously as being connected, but you know somewhere in your system, when you hear this nattering and this, you know, judgment and criticism and, you know, constant finger pointing, that puts you back in that other place and you shut down, and it comes from that reptilian brain of, oh, no, you don't, you know, and just all of that bubbles out. So it is important that we think about when we had these experiences, what were the contexts around it? Maybe it's around our body. Maybe it's around our confidence. Maybe it's around our cooking. Maybe it's around our parenting. These are all areas of our hot buttons. Remember, we talked about hot buttons. These are all hot button issues that your partner will know trigger you. Sometimes they do it on purpose. Sometimes they do it to deflect off their own stuff. Sometimes they do it because they're angry about something else you did and they know the way to get you, to hook you into a conflict is through this means. We are complex beings and we do very complex things to our love partners. But I'm hoping in this scenario, when you think about the different brain responses, you can start to deconstruct your previous conflicts and just get real. How do we do it? What happens to us when we are in these dark and stormy times? And is there one partner who might go a little bit reptilian more, right? Does that person need more support? Maybe they need professional help. Maybe they need to do more journaling. Maybe they need to, you know, speak with another mentor or another person outside of the relationship to work through some of the really, really fiery hot button issues that keep pushing your relationship into winter, right? So this is really a time to evaluate. And the reptilian brain provides a really clean structure to say, where are we coming from in this conflict? Because if it's reptilian, it's blizzard almost every time. It is really hard not to go into a blizzard state when you are coming from a reptilian brain space, right? They are married together deep, deep, deep. So of course I don't want that for you. I don't want that for your love relationship. And I know if you are committed to your partner, you don't want that in your love relationship. So take some time to really think about your reactions and where they come from. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.